All-Star, three-time world champion with the Boston Celtics, and he was an All-American here at UCLA under Coach John Willie. He's written and published his first book called Levitation View, which some copies there. Pleasure reading for the weekend. Nice beach weather. And through original poetry and prose, he explores and expresses his intimate experience with racism, professional athletics, entrepreneurship, and both positive and negative parental influences. A portion of his book sales will directly benefit at-risk youth through his nonprofit organization. And without further ado, I give you Mr. Willie Naulls.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here. I was really interested to see what the format was here at UCLA since I was in the programs here many years ago. But I'm happy to be here to kind of share with you my trek through here. There are probably a lot of questions that you really don't even know the answer, or to ask rather. And I think I'll start off by talking about UCLA in the 50s. I was born in Dallas, Texas, and I moved to San Pedro, California when I was 9 years old. And going from the segregated South to being the person who integrated the institutions there, it was an incredible experience because I went from a system where black youth were shut down. You had to shut up to shut down, and we were shut in. We're in this community that you couldn't get out of. It was a world of fear. The white institution had placed fear on black people, so we couldn't look at them. We couldn't think past our community, and there was no hope. And it was a very fearful time in my life until I was 9 years old. And so this skin color dominated over our expression, my expression. I was a very frustrated young man. And there was just no hope. I mean, we couldn't do anything. All of my role models were men who walked around with their heads down, including my father, because if they looked up, they would be killed. And so my parents moved from Dallas, Texas to San Pedro, California. My father worked in shipyards, and my mom was a domestic. And from that point, when I got there, all of my friends, all of the people in my community, everybody around us in the projects, was a governmental project for the workers in the shipyard where my father worked. All of my friends were white kids. And at first I was a little timid about the association because I was told at a very young age that a white man wanted to kill me. And that I had to shut down my expression and not look at him and not have this normal growth that normal people have in communities. And so I didn't know anything different, and I was a very obedient child. We grew up in the church, a Baptist church in Dallas. And so I got into California, and all of these kids were running after me to play with me, and so I relaxed and became acculturated into the white environment there. And you know, then I started to mature. In the 5th grade, I was dodgeball king, you see. And I found out that my hand-eye coordination and my size, I was superior in athletics from a very young age. Because God had blessed me with a good body all my life, an excellent body. As a matter of fact, my parents gave me tremendous genes. I was taller than everybody and better looking than everybody. I became comfortable with myself because of success in sports. I went to junior high school, and 7th grade I started playing basketball and softball and football, and I was very clear to me that I was superior in sports. I was just superior to these people. And we had this educational system. San Pedro was an excellent public high school, and I was taught the rules of grammar and English by Mrs. Woodard in 7th grade and Mrs. Tiggett in the 10th grade. And all these people I remember My coaches were Mr. Briggs, Mr. Hunt, Mr. Lynch, and Mr. Ruff. And they taught us the fundamentals of keeping your body in condition, cardiovascular things. And it was just an excellent system. After-school system was excellent. And I flourished. And I was a 3.5 student in grammar school when I went up on the hill and had to choose between football, which was my second best sport, and baseball was my best sport. Basketball was natural. Basketball was already very easy to me because I was taller, more agile, and so I went through that system at high school of growing and maturing in the white world, and really doing very well. And I was trained to keep my mouth shut, and I was trained to be obedient to authority. I was trained to respect women and elderly people, especially teachers. So I didn't have any problems in the system, see, because I was a benefit to whomever I was around, especially in sports. We won, so therefore coaches got their credits, and they moved on to become, college coaches. But I found out that system I understood, and I was a very competitive person. I wanted to be the best. I wanted to score more points than anybody. I wanted to and I had control. See, I had control. I was a scorer and a rebounder in basketball. I was a pitcher in baseball, so I actually controlled the action, especially in baseball. There's nothing about race in baseball. The guy's got a bat, you throw it by him, you're the king. He hits it out of the park, he won up on you. So you get this combative thing that's going on, and you learn very early on that there's no affirmative action in sports. There was token, like the systems would not allow us to go to the university institutions around the country, but because of our talent, we intruded on that system, you see. Because of our talent. For no other reason. I went to school here with Yvonne Berkberg. Went to school here with Johnny Cochran. Went to school here with Hartman Pierce and Rami Loud, some people you've never known who were all Americans. Dr. Vivian Robinson, who's at Harvard University now. So the black people that came here from Jefferson High School predominantly, and some kids came from Texas. They were successful in high school. They were productive in high school. They were competitive in high school. So competition's always been my thing. Excuse me. And so my mother taught me that anything you don't earn is not worth having. And that I was no better than anybody else, and nobody was better than me. And that don't confront the white man because it's not fair, he'll kill you and get away with it. But she said something really strange. She said, pray for him. Because that's the power to get past it. And then it's up to God to change things, which he did in my life. And I've seen racism to the point now we have Charles Barkley on TV. Running his mouth about anything that comes to his mind. He's paid handsomely for it. I see guys who are not very good sitting on the bench, professional baseball, riding out a career making $8-10 million a year, who look just like me. Those same guys were not even allowed to play basketball. I've seen people that talked about blacks had superior talent having to deal with this kid Nash, who's playing with Dallas now, who's the MVP of the NBA. So it's not color, you see. That's a camouflage. It's not color. It's what you develop from the inside out. It's the standard of character that an individual has to go out, prepare himself to compete so that what was given him at creation by God will work itself out into an industry. That's all it's about. And from my perspective, I know some of you have your own views. But I'm telling you, I'm here to tell you what worked for me, okay? This is a tough world we live in. Racism is not overt anymore, it's covert. Excuse me, not racism, evil is. You know what evil is? It's something that's trying to take you out of where God has created you to be. Some of you may not believe in God. That's okay. He's real. He's to me. But evil comes and tries to get us off of the path that we were destined to be on. We control our minds and work at our passions and have that work out of us. There will be fruit on your tree in an abundance that you can share with somebody else. Because there are people in South Central Los Angeles and other ghetto communities around this country who don't have the opportunities that you have. So the secrets, whatever it took for you to get here and be successful in what you are attempting to do or what your life's passions are, you need to get on about doing it so then you can go and share it with someone else. It's just that simple. And the things that we worked for, we intruded on the crest of that wave of integration. We went places at UCLA. Coach Wooden took us places that black people had never been before. University of Kentucky. The coach was a guy named Ralph. He said, "I'll never have in on my team. Never." Well, Coach Wooden told them that he would not bring us there unless all of us could come there. We could all stay in the same place and be a group. So we went there, integrated the buses, and we integrated the hotels, we integrated the university athletic facilities, and that was the beginning of change. It was a diversity working itself out through God's talent that He gives people. In my case, it was basketball. Football, there's a guy named Jim Brown, whom most of you heard of, had the same experience. He moved from an old black area in the South and went to live in an all-white area. And grew up, went to Syracuse University, became the Professional Football Hall of Famer. Another dear friend of mine, Dr. Augustus Will, is a professor emeritus at Harvard University. His mother took him, who was a teacher in the South, she took him and sent him to a private school in the 7th grade, and he is now a well-renowned orthopedic surgeon who is a professor emeritus, as I said, at Harvard University, very well respected, written many textbooks. So that acculturation action that our parents took, and the civil rights movement broke down the barriers, and now it's open competition to get into this school, which is the hardest school in the country to get into. And so we have to somehow come up with a plan to go back and inspire young people, as I was inspired in sports, to develop themselves so they can be competitive academically. As I said before, it will not work unless it's earned growth. It will not work in our system in this country. So that kind of gives you a background. I went on to play professional basketball for 10 years. I was an all-star for 4 years and professional world champions for 3 years, and retired and got back into business. And the things I learned in sports, I took into the business world. And I found out you have the same dynamic. You see, you have, in sports you learn to get face-to-face with a guy. You get face-to-face with him, and you can look in his eyes and tell what he's made of. Guys like Bill Russell, it's like looking in the eyes of a lion. Because his eyes growl, I'm going to take you out. Some guys, they look away. Well, same in the world we live in. If you're confident in what you're doing, it doesn't matter what size and what you look like. When you go to the table, from the inside out you look. See, I used to always be concerned about and always worried about, and even now I'm conscious of the fact that I want to know, looking at me through your eyes, what do you see? Who do you see me to be? looking at me through your eyes, who do you see me to be? So what I bring to the table then becomes very important. If I'm not qualified, I will not get over it. If I do, it will be temporary. Because people that are given things, even inheritance, end up with somebody coming and taking it away from them. So the competitive nature that I learned in sports, and with the rules that I lived of being slow to speak, slow to get angry, and quick to listen, that I learned from my mom, carried me through. Because you can, the coach wouldn't, and my mother taught me first, coach wouldn't tell me that you should never be able to tell if you won or lost after a victory or a loss. You have to go out of the game, you should never be able to tell. So I had this, this strong, silent demeanor, and inside of me was a raging, wild man to kill somebody for a basketball, or to strike the guy at the plate, or to sell, 500 cars a day when I was an automobile dealer, or to negotiate the best contract I could for Walton, Jabbar, and some of the guys around here, Sidney Wicks. Just to do your best. Giving your all, it seems to me, is not so far from victory. A guy named Marietta said that. He was quoted as saying that. So, giving my all, after professional basketball, I got into business and did well there. Had an office in Beverly Hills on Wilshire near Beverly. And my wife Ann. My wife Ann is a graduate of School of Medicine and a GYN specialist. Her father was a professor of law here, and when I was in school here, actually, and I guess I maybe met him once, but I don't remember. But that's what integration does, you see. Because at one point in my life, there's no way in the world I thought about marrying a white woman. But when you look for something from the inside of people, you get past that skin thing. See? That's the biggest obstruction that we have. Anybody seen this movie Crash? Have you seen this movie Crash?
Yeah.
I mean, my goodness, what are we evolving into? Every stereotype you can think of. But it's getting down to dealing with stereotypes, which are polarizing us into categories. And our children are confused because they see us and hear us at the dinner table. And hear the remarks we make when we get people that look like us. Everything. The Civil Rights Movement opened up everything so that equal opportunities for everything. And people that are insecure feel inferior with the competition that athletes experience every day. I heard somebody say that Steve Nash, his name's Steve Nash?
Yeah.
He only got it because he was a white boy. Well, the next night he had 54 points and 20 rebounds. I don't know what color that was, but it was victory for his team. Because he's playing against everybody. And until we get that kind of understanding about life, until we get out in the middle of the arena of life and go face to face with people, talk to people, not look at them as a color, but as a person, created, unique person, have compassion for fellowship and involvement with people, there are going to be serious problems which are ever increasing in the wrong direction because of inferiority complexes, insecurities, insanity. it's not working, you see. It's getting worse, it's not getting better. So insanity is continuing to do the same thing, expecting different results. See what I mean? It's insane. We talk to our children about it. I have 4 children. Oldest daughter graduates from Stanford University here from the Graduate School of Music and Opera. And I have a son who's a computer expert, professional who lives in Orange County and Oceanside, and with his 2 children. And one son, Jonah, who's in Texas, who's married, getting ready to get married, and who is, he's a pretty boy. He makes his money on posters and ads and movies and all that. And our youngest daughter, Malika, is a graduate of the University of Florida, and she works for MTV. And she's in the one that does all the, do you ever see some show, the show Pet My Ride? She's in the credits there for the production, So I've been blessed. We lived 2 blocks from here for 20 years on Loring Avenue, and a street that I used to go by when I was a student here. And drive up, and God blessed me so that I bought a house there. My children went to school, Warren Avenue School over here. They went to Brentwood Academy and Harvard Westlake School over here, the best schools around Marymount, because that's what I wanted for them, things I didn't have. And that's, education is to be competitively involved with education, to be competitive on. My children can teach college right now, pretty well. Since they're in high school, they need the experience of college, but they can teach. So now they can go out and share with other people. It's not about color, it's not about race, it's about academics is hard bark. Academics, man, I can tell you I was not a good student, I was an athlete. I was not a good student, I cheated on exams, I did all kinds of stuff. I didn't learn anything, I had to come back here. I didn't get a degree until 26 years. I came on back here and got my degree. When I had a break, my daughter was taking her to Westlake School for Girls every day. My son was going to Lycée Française. And all these places I had to work and pay for, gladly. But it's hard work to sit down and ingest what somebody says with the understanding to put it, regurgitate it back out on paper in some kind of form to get your reward or award or grade. Love that system though. Love that system. There's no fear in me. I'm not afraid of any of you. And I hope you're not afraid of me. When I started writing, I got this epiphany from God before I went into ministry. He said, get out of business, which was my life. Business is very competitive. In the automobile business, on Monday mornings, we have sales meetings, you see. So I'm the boss, and I'm sitting around there. I set the standard up, and I see them around there like a little bunch of, it's like going to a grammar school, these guys, some of these salespeople. And so I want to know what every guy's done during the week. Give me the numbers for the week. Because I know that every year that I played sports, they did my numbers. And my numbers were low, the pay went down. They were higher and higher and higher at every increasing amount of money. So the reward was money. But these guys, you always have 2 or 3 guys that give you a weather report, what we call a weather report. You know, I had this deal and it didn't work out, this lady's going to call me back. And the bottom line, it means he didn't sell any cars during that week. In life, you can always tell people by what comes out of their mouth. Listen to what people say. You can tell if they wish you well. You can tell if they are competitive in the open market. Guys that when you talk, you always get their hands up like this. That's guys making excuses. Learn all those from sports. So, fear is debilitating. Fear is impeding growth. Fear takes you off of where God would have you be. Fear. There's nothing positive about fear. I teach young people all the time about winning. W-I-N. Will. W is for will. You have to, we have the decision, the thing we fought for is to have a will. Remember the old days in the South that a black man was considered the extension of a white man's will. Well, we have freedom now. We have our own wills. One of the thing about racism and segregation and people, enslaved people, is that their will to do what they determine to do is locked down. And the first thing that's done during that lockdown procedure is to take away the rights to education. I want to keep you ignorant. So that, you notice, that's the most important, is to have knowledge. Not only knowledge, but understand the knowledge. And wisdom is wisely using the understanding of the knowledge that you have available to you. Ever increase in knowledge. So the important thing I wanted to leave with you today is I don't know how's my time, Coach.
Doing fine.
What I want to leave with you today is the importance of looking at yourself in the mirror, doing a personal evaluation of yourself, daily, weekly. Because there are a lot of institutions that are trying to take us down, to get us in bondage. It's covert now. It has nothing to do with color. It's green. It's money. How many of you got credit cards? And you pay it off every month. If you're not paying it off every month, you're in bondage. What you're spending. You're mortgaging your future for today's pleasure. And then a lot of people are declaring bankruptcy of our society. I mean, just all of you know, you're college students or affiliated with this great institution, you know that statistics show us that there are more people declaring bankruptcy now in the history of our country. People that are buying things and going for every kind of scheme you can think of. Refinance schemes, everything you can think of. So I would encourage you to look at yourself in the mirror, stop, decide what it is, what it is in your life. What are you going to do? What are your plans? And since I'm up here, I'm using myself as an example of someone who has been from the ghettos of Dallas, Texas, where we didn't have enough to eat, where there was no hope, to an opening up of a road for me to travel that depended on me picking the fruit out of there. The educators, the coaches, and picking every experience was a platform to put in the mortar of my foundational building, so that I could take and become responsible man to have children and a wife, and to not only be a benefit to them, but to younger people who come after me, who are looking for, who were not as blessed as I was, to have a mother who sat at my feet with the floor mat that I walked on and dusted my feet off, who went out and worked in one of my classmates' house, cleaning her house up, and in high school, and who brought it home and prepared for me, and talked to me, gave me these one-liners, and gave her life for me. And she taught me how to give my life for my children and my family. So, the will to do your best. I has integrity. Integrity is doing what you say you're going to do all the time. Your word. Your word is very important. It's the most important thing we have. Are you trustworthy? I didn't intend this to be a sermon. Does it sound like a sermon? That's who I am. That's who I am. I got to tell you that you are among the most blessed people in the world, because you're sitting here in this university, educated, with all kinds of options, do whatever you want to do with your life. You're young, and I would encourage you to push yourself, to intrude on possibilities. Go out and search yourself to find out who God has created you to be, and get about selfishly working at developing it to the best you can be. Sounds corny. I've heard it ever since I was a little boy from my mom. Heard it here, Coach Whitten. His pyramid of success. It talked about getting on with being industrious and the cornerstones, industriousness and enthusiasm. So being enthusiastically industrious and had all these other building blocks of character. And the top one was competitive greatness, team skills, and all those kind of things. And so that's who I am. I mean, that's where I grew up in that whole process. And I pass that on to my children, my wife, and I really, fear is the biggest, the most debilitating force. I remember one of my daughters, I won't say which one, whom I spent a lot of money in Sunday school, a lot of hard work. And when she got home from college, she said, "Dad, I don't feel qualified to do anything." I said, "Well, maybe we go back to school for some more, you know." But I had to go up to my room and sit down. I didn't want to jump all over her. I said, "Sit down in my room." I mean, if where people put our skin color can come out and go and get all the education and then come back and say, "I don't feel qualified," that simply means that it's not about color. See? That's what it means. Because that's the truth. She didn't feel qualified. She said, "Well, you know, go and do whatever you have to do to feel that you're qualified." Confidence comes from knowing how to do something. Do it well. So, I've always asked myself, even about Coach Wood, did he really care about me? Did anybody really care? All the stuff we're talking about, did anybody really care? I mean, what's on your mind? Are you thinking about going and other things you have to do? Does anybody really care? Because I do. I do. I have a deep desire to serve people. Any of you want to talk to me about anything, I can give you an answer. I can direct you to people who are specialists in law and psychology and sociology. Where Joe Johnson. And but I can tell you this mostly, the most important thing is about you. It's about individuals not only pushing yourselves, challenging yourself, and then pushing yourself to be who God created you to be, but it's about being open to serve other people and not be challenged by what somebody else looks like. This universe is very difficult to get in, and since they took away all of the requirements that did not involve competing for grades and SAT scores. Once they did that, it was like a rocket taking off. And people in this community, a lot of people in this community, certainly in the Central Los Angeles community, are not served by this university. People come from all over the world, come here, because they're qualified. Because that's the rules. In basketball, they have rules. In baseball, they have rules. At this university, they have rules. So learn the rules and get competitive. Question?
Actually, two questions. One, could you touch on what the L is before we have to close out in your when, or is it the N and when? And two, could you talk about the mindset of African American males when you were a student here at UCLA? Oftentimes, the student body has been somewhat critical of the lack of interaction with athletes, with the general student body population. Did that exist when you were here? What was the mindset? You mentioned a number of some of LA's and the nation's greatest scholars and professionals who were here when you were here. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Sure, the end is with no fear. I'm sorry. I touched on that first. With no fear. Because you have the will and the no fear. It's counterproductive, and the integrity to do everything that you say you're going to do and honor your word with no fear. So that's a good point. The African American males, when I was here, was very, very productive people. Every guy had a goal. Most of the guys that I know, I can think of 5, 10 doctors. I could think of a lot of them had to go to Meharry Medical School because they couldn't go to school here. Medical school here would not admit it because of racism. A lot of lawyers. Rick Johnson had lots of lawyers, lots of educators. I mean, very, very powerful, committed men and women who finished the course, got their degrees, and went on to get professional degrees. And there's a woman named Nina Hardin who wrote the legislation to start the Black Caucus. She was the attorney. So there were African Americans were very committed. The men were very, very strong because we were trained well at home. The biggest challenge with young people today is that they don't have the parental guidance. They don't have the role models. They don't have someone to walk with them and talk to them, be their vanguard, stand with them, and correct them, and tough love. But nobody was around, and so the family structure has been eroded, and so you have more and more children born out of wedlock whose parents are not responsible. And so that is the biggest problem. Our young men today not only not qualified to get into this school, but they are increasing numbers going to prison because they believe the hype is on television about easy money. And this academic stuff is hard work. Business is hard. Everything I knew was in business, and you have to utilize it in business to make a buck. 200 employees, people looking at you to come up with a bottom line and pay them their money. They have to make enough money to take care of my family. Enough money to plan for their future. So it's hard work. It takes a lot of time. It takes a cumulative amount of knowledge to practically apply that to be successful, to have no fear. And if something's not working, you stop. Stop doing that, and you correct them, you learn from that mistake, but you keep proven the model. John Wooden did that here at UCLA. If he had had the zone press when I was a student here, we would have won a national championship, but he didn't have it. He didn't get it until Jerry Norman introduced it in the 1960s. Some people may not want to hear that. I'm telling you that as the next athlete, I believe that we would have won a national championship. In spite of Bill Russell, who was at the University of San Francisco and won 60 games in a row. In spite of him. Casey Jones, his teammate. In spite of them, we would have beaten them. Because we had a system that everybody got better on the team. Everybody knew what everybody else was supposed to do, and the kind of like the cream, the talent rises, and so you have the stars who get most points and most rebounds because you're playing more time. And I'm finishing the second volume of my book now about my days at UCLA. And this is the first volume. It's about through the 12th grade, volume 1. So I would encourage you to donate some money for your own benefit. But this one's about my days here at UCLA. And we were the Bruin Dogs. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I do some work with student athletes on campus. One of the biggest challenges is actually trying to balance your academic and athletic success. Oftentimes the athletic role supersedes the academic role. And in your case, you were afforded an opportunity to play sport that basically allowed you to continue your academic pursuit. What was your mindset or your attitude going into sport if in fact sport was taken away from you? Did you think about life after sport if you weren't afforded those opportunities to continue to play at the college level, at the professional level? Did you have sort of a backup plan?
Well, my backup plan was that I believed in myself, and I stopped playing baseball. It was my best sport in high school. After making All-City and Player of the Year, my 11th grade year, I didn't play my 12th grade year because of a coach who didn't respect me, disciplined, you know what I mean? And so I stopped playing baseball. So sports was never my only. It's not what I thought of myself to be. I just wanted to be the best when I was playing. And here at UCLA, we were required to at least keep the minimum GPA to stay eligible. But I found out that being successful in sports demands that you give prime time to the development, especially nowadays. So that is the challenge of athletes, because to be great, you have to give great time, prime time to preparation and listen to your coaches and go into the weight room. And my son Jonah was an all-city basketball player at Beverly Hills High School. And he came here and he was running around with those guys, with the O'Bannons and all those guys. And he came to me one day and said, "Dad, this basketball stuff is 24/7. He said, I just don't want to hang in this because it requires." He said, I know that I'm good, but to keep up with these guys, I have to give it everything that I got. He was guarding Mitchell Butler. And he said that, would you mind if I quit? So I told him to go and pray about it and think about it, and it's his decision. Remember that once you quit, it's hard to get back up to where you are. Because he was just gone, he was a freshman, just at the point where he's getting ready to bust in that lineup. It's a great athlete, but it didn't mean that much to him. So it has to mean something to you, the university, individually, to give of your time. Sports is an extracurricular activity that some guys eventually make money in, but most of them don't. So the realization that you're eventually going to have to do something else, if that's taught. I mean, realistically, to tell a guy you can be your best, you don't know how good you can be, just be your best. But the education you get here is most important, because the time you spend in the classroom teaches you the discipline of sitting down and taking a body of information and digesting it, regurgitating, moving on to the named in, completing what you started. Then taking that, if you want to be a professional, you got to go on and on and on. So the advice that I would give them would be just straight up, sports, and to be your best, you've got to give your best, but you also owe it to yourself individually to give equal time. Push yourself, equal time to academics. Did that answer your question? Yes, sir. Okay.
Yes, I'd like to ask you how would the education that you received at UCLA benefited you when you went to play for Boston in those early years with the Celtics? How did it help you get through the tough times of being with that team in the year that you played?
Okay. At UCLA, when I first came to this place to stay, this was a segregated community. Black people could not stay in this town anywhere. So the sun goes down, you take the view and go east. A group of Jewish fraternity guys, at first it was a guy named Ed Hummel, who was a head yell leader. He's telling me I can come live with his parents. I lived from Watts to Beverly Hills. So the first stop was pretty nice. Then a group of Jewish guys, the Sammys, invited me to stay at their fraternity house. And the lessons that I learned there, I still use right now. Because these guys, you see, that's a part of this, the secrets of the socioeconomic strata, upper strata of people. The secrets, how did you make that money and how do you keep it? That's what I heard from these guys. And I was poor, and I thought UCLA owed me something. You know, they promised me something, whether another university promised them. I thought they were going to, anyway, I got confused. My attitude needed an adjustment, and so I had to make me some money, because I'm used to being independent. I worked from the time I was 7 years old. I'm going to take care of myself. We got the little bit of peanuts that they gave us to live, and I lived better than when I was in Watts. They didn't have any money. Everybody had cars and clothing. So these guys took me down to the Smata district. You see what I mean? Clothing manufacturers, the fathers. And they went down there, and so I buy some shirts, and the guys love me. They give me shirts. I was really, really dressed well when I went here. And, but I saw shirts in the stores, how much they cost, and I saw how much they sold them for. Then they told me how much it cost them to manufacture them, to sell them as manufacturers so they can make a profit, and then the retailers. So you got the retail, the manufacturers, the wholesalers and the manufacturers. So I learned that concept. So I learned how to buy, and so I started buying from them the best that they had for 25% of the retail. And I load my car up with things, and I go down to Watts and sell it. Make me some money. Sell it for half price, the wholesale price, and make money. So I was selling out, and I was making money. And I learned how to deal, and I learned how to negotiate at the fraternity house. I learned how to negotiate with my coach. I thought he was a jive sucker, you see, because he wasn't taking care of me. Let me tell you something. I'm just putting it into my book. When Emmett Till was killed in 1955, was the beginning of my senior year, and the yearbook that year and the yearbook the year before had white-skinned students with black stuff on their faces at the UCLA Spring Sing. So I'm going to my coach, and I don't know how to tell him, but I expected him to protect me. You see, I expected him, he's my surrogate father. When I left home because my father and I did not get along very well at all. So he was my surrogate father, at least I put him in that position. He didn't deal with that. And so that's the glad you brought this up, because I had to get rid of that hatred, you see. I mean, that boiling inside to want to lose control, get out of control, and physically get on somebody, or yell and scream. So you have this teapot that's getting ready to see it every once in a while, but rage was always in a cage in me, because I was trained up to put it in a cage. So it never got out of its cage, but I heard it barking a lot of times, and then I had to go someplace and sit down. You know, and then you got to go out and play basketball. And then you got to look at these guys. You got to look at these guys who are inferior talent-wise, getting the awards, and having your coach not speak up for you, but speaking up for somebody else who's a white skin. So all this stuff running through my mind as I'm growing up. See, that's all a part of maturation, because you've got to be in control. If you're out of control, you will get killed. Now, not so much by the white man, but by the system. You got to control the system, will wipe you out. And there is a system, institutions that we have. And you see, it's all fair though. I mean, you can do anything you want to do in our world. That's what we've evolved to. A black man, a black woman, a Chinese, a Japanese, whatever, you can do anything you want to do in our world. But you have to be prepared. It's a very competitive world. And if you allow yourself to think because of the color of your skin that you have an advantage, you're at a disadvantage. If you don't believe it, you ask some of the people who grew up in this town when I was here, who owned all of this community, Wilshire Boulevard and everywhere else, who can't afford, their kids can't even afford to come rent a room in here now. Because the kids relaxed and didn't stay competitive. So they run around the world, you know, smoking hashish and going to different countries and walking through Africa and doing all this kind of stuff. Because when they go to Africa, they see people with no clothes on or in poverty, and they feel superior. Big problem.
We have time for one more question, Dr. Hunt.
Oh, I actually have my question answered. But actually, let me follow up on the question about your time here at UCLA. You talked a bit about playing for John Wooden and I guess general, you know, the racial environment while you were here. And you also mentioned some of the other African-American students who were here who went on to do great things. Can you talk a little bit about, first of all, for those other students who weren't athletes? I understand probably a large share of the males who were here at the time were, or did play some sport. But what were your interactions like with them? Because you spent a lot of time in the fraternity, but you know, what was your interaction like with other African-American students at the time? What did you talk about? I mean, how did you, I guess, console one another to deal with the daily challenges you had as African-American students in a segregated campus?
Well, that's a good question, an excellent question, matter of fact. And when I moved from San Pedro and came to UCLA and met the African Americans, there was acculturation into that culture too. Because I was with all white in San Pedro, so when I came here, I learned terms like Hayela, Marani, good hair and bad hair. I learned all that stuff I never heard of before. And then so I was introduced to the Los Angeles bourgeois, this community of where light-skinned black people didn't want to associate with me because I was dark-skinned. So that was that dynamic going on. And we had but because I was an athlete, I had all the fine girls, and so I was the king, see. So when I go over to the west side, we had the most popular social group with the same guys here, but we normally, these Catholic fraternity houses over on Crenshaw Boulevard. It used to be east of Western Avenue. But we got along very well. We got along very well, and we understood that we had to be better to be successful. We understood that. I mean, every guy knew that. And we also, sometimes we'd have dialogue about somebody who didn't, Sam, do you remember Sam Brown? Sam Brown, if he played now, he would be All-American 3 years. But he, you know, called him First Down Brown when he got here. Now then they said Sam Touchdown Brown. But he didn't make All-American. He wasn't even like substituted in and out to start a game and somebody comes. So we knew that, and we expected that things were not fair. So we knew that we had to be better. And so you got all this thing going on. But most of the social life was in West Los Angeles, called the west side of LA, Sugar Hill. And guys who became professionals were kind of like the leaders in the social, and they went to Harry and place down in Howard University, med school, in Washington D.C., Harry's in Tennessee, and was doing basic professor. There's a guy named J.D. Collins who's I think a professor here now. That's who played football. I think he may have gone to school here, but very few guys. So it was a social life, and we were introduced. There were some football players. I don't know if you ever heard of Ike Jones, who just got an award from the Academy Awards Society for film production. He was a football player also. But he was the first, I think one of the first UCLA athletes to integrate openly with women. And he was like Pied Piper. He had women all over this. And beautiful, beautiful women. Willie Strodes went here before me. Kenny Washington used to come on campus. He was an All-American football player. Jackie Robinson used to come on campus. Dr. Ralph Bunche came into the locker room, and when I was a sophomore, he came up and hugged me and said, "Welcome to UCLA. It's good to have you here. Do well, finish your course." We went back to play in Madison Square Garden, and he came up to me on the bench and with Jackie Robinson. Both of them hugged me before the game. Came in the locker room after the game. "I wish you well." They wished me well.
This is why you were a Celtic?
Pardon?
This is why you were a Celtic?
I was the Knickerbockers then.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was the first African-American captain in integrated professional sports with the Knicks. And I was 4-year All-Star there. Then when I was the Celtics, I was won the championship. That's an excellent question. We did have, we knew that the system was not fair. And that people looked upon us first by the color of our skin and judged us that we were inferior, ill-prepared, and these guys proved them wrong. So all became professionals. Johnny Parker was probably one of his famous attorney. When he had his memorial service 2 or 3 weeks ago, there were people standing in line 8 o'clock in the morning, and the service didn't start until 11. Because the guy was so well loved. People didn't know all the things that he did for people. He gave and gave and gave and gave his time to civil rights causes. People of all colors. So it was individually, we were all islands prepared for combat. And most of the guys look at you and they went about their life here without which my mother used to call acting like fools. Make a lot of noise, and because that's what was expected of them. Only the guys who were chosen to go to college were the ones who were quiet. Mom mannered, and Dad was called good rearing. Those were the only guys that all had the same demeanor. Because we were on the crest of that wave, setting an example, getting a part of the foundation for earned diversity